Why is your desk a mess, Jack? Mind your own business, that's why. So when I'm not playing retro games on Twitch, which you should be following me over there, by the way, please and thank you, I like going to the movies. There's something about being in the movie theater, watching a film with a shared audience that I genuinely appreciate, whether it's laughing along with a comedy or hearing everybody's like sudden gasps during a suspenseful moment in a film. Or when it comes to movies, I don't really go out of my way to watch horror films because I do find that for the most part, horror movies tend to be somewhat samey. There aren't really a lot of horror movies that really stick out for me, but occasionally one comes along that gets a lot of praise and a lot of people talk about it or reference it on social media, and it makes me in the very least intrigued enough to go out of my way to see the film at some point. And with today's film, Obsession, I went out of my way to go see it in the theater because I've had a couple people say, you've got to see it. See it in the theater. Let me know what you think. So after seeing it, my thoughts on the film were so abundant that I decided to go ahead and make a video about it. And if this format turns out to be successful, then I'll probably do this with movies from now on. So if you would like to see more video reviews from me, make sure that you hit the like button and leave a comment down below letting me know what films you think I should check out and do a review of. So with that out of the way, let's get to it. So one thing with this is, since I will get into some plot details, I guess they can be considered spoiler-ish. So if you want a quick spoiler-free version of what I thought of Obsession, make sure you go to this point in the video right here that's on the screen right now. So Obsession was written and directed by Curry Barker, who I've never heard of before, but this film is awesome. And if he keeps making films like this with this kind of style and this kind of nuance to it, I can see him being a very successful director in this genre. And it was a largely independent film. Like, it didn't even cost $1 million to make this movie. And it's already made back about 100 million worldwide. So good for you, dude. You did really good with this movie. Obsession is a bit of like a supernatural horror film. It's about a small group of friends. There's the main character, Bear, who's played by an actor by the name of Michael Johnston. Then there's his buddy, Ian. Then their friends, Sarah and Nikki. And Nikki is played by Indy Navarrete, who, oh God, her performance is amazing in this movie. And they all work at a music store owned by Sarah's father, played by Andy Richter. Basically, what happens is Bear has a serious crush on Nikki. And he's relying on Ian to help him, work his game up a little bit to help build up his confidence so that he can work up the courage to ask Nikki out, basically. And after that sort of works, but not really, he goes back home to discover that his cat got into some medicine and died. So he's really upset about that, and he's pretty much ready to just not bother going out that night until he gets a call from Nikki, who wants him to come out for trivia night. And she ends up, saying on the phone that she lost her crystal necklace while she was walking around talking to him. And he gets this idea, maybe I'll go to the store and replace it for her. So he decides to go and he gets it, but then he sees something on the shelf, this little novelty toy that's something that you'd see out of an old magazine, those novelty gag gifts that don't really work the way they advertise to, but they're cheap enough anyway. I digress. This is something called a one-wish willow, which is like a piece of a willow branch that you snap in half after you make a wish, and that wish supposedly comes true. He decides to buy that instead of the crystal necklace. And after their evening out, he brings Nikki home, and after he kind of makes an ass out of himself and she shoots him down, she goes in for the night, and before he takes off, he decides to bust out the one-wish willow, and he hesitates with it, but then he finally asks something along the lines of, he's like, I wish Nikki would fucking love me. And then he snaps it in half, and next thing you know, she's standing outside the house, and she's acting really strange. The strange activity really builds up throughout the entire movie to get not only like obsessive, but also very possessive and downright like disturbing. There's some really creepy shit that happens throughout this entire movie, and it all plays into the whole like monkey's paw thing, which I thought was really effective with this movie. There were a lot of moments that were I guess some would consider it unintentionally hilarious because there were a lot of moments where the audience I saw the movie with was laughing really hard. But I want to say that a lot of the laughter that I heard was like uncomfortable laughter because there were a couple moments where I was uncomfortably laughing too. I guess to get a little more into it, that first night he has Nikki over, he wakes up to discover she's not in his bed, and he goes out to the kitchen to get his day started, and he looks down on the floor and sees that there was a little memorial laid out for his dead cat, which Nikki retrieved from the freaking garbage. And he's immediately like, no, we don't do that. So can you not? And she's like, I'm really sorry, blah, blah, blah. And then they go to work together. And the entire time he's trying to communicate with Ian about how his night with Nikki was. And Bear can't help but notice that Nikki is like staring at him the entire time. And immediately it's really unsettling because he's getting exactly what he wished for. But as we see, it's definitely more than he bargained for throughout the entire film. The following night, she comes back over. She declares her love for him, and they end up going out on a dinner date. Ian is like frantically calling Bear to try telling him something, and when Bear finally answers the phone, Ian tells Bear that Nikki's father, who she claimed had cancer and she was really sad about it, is actually perfectly healthy and fine. They're unsure why she would lie about something like that, and when Bear goes to confront her about it in a very gentle tone, she starts like saying no repeatedly, and it kind of reminded me of that scene in the movie Get Out when that one lady is telling him like no, 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 and just continually changes tones in the way she's saying it. The same sort of thing happens in this movie, but she ends up getting really loud about it to the point she's making a scene in front of everybody. It was very tense. They spend another night together, and more creepy shit happens. She basically gets out of bed in the middle of the night to stand in the corner of their room, and Nikki insists on standing there in the corner of the room watching Bear sleep. And when Bear is finally able to convince Nikki to come back to bed and, lay in bed with him, he goes to like turn over to try falling asleep, and she screams for him to stay in the same position. And like my heart is pounding out of my chest at this point because I'm not expecting the loud sounds, which, by the way, if you're really averse to like sudden loud noises, you're not going to have a good time in this movie, but I guess it's something you should expect considering it's a horror film. I digress. So the next day, she has off from work, but Bear has to go to work, so she packs a lunch for him. He leaves, and I gotta say, like, this point in the movie, it's the obsession and the possessiveness is starting to become obvious because the entire door is like duct taped shut. Hysterically, like hilariously, is trying to open the door to leave his own home so he can go to work. And he finally does it. He leaves, and him and Sarah are having a conversation at work. Opens up his lunch, and she leaves a little note for him saying, like, for my food critic, which, by the way, he had explained at some point that he wanted to be a food critic. So she plays into that, for my little food critic. And there's a sandwich in there, which he's starting to eat. Sarah sees the note and starts kind of teasing him about it and says, like, wait, what's this other side say? It says, so what's the verdict, cat? And he reads the note. He looks down at his sandwich. He reads the note again. Then he really looks into the sandwich, and I shit you not, she actually like cooked his cat and fed it to him, which obviously leads to him like violently vomiting in one of the garbage cans. He goes to drop Ian off at home because he didn't have a ride into work. He tells him basically like, I didn't invite you to this party because I really don't want Nikki being there because she seems to be having a mental breakdown, and you, Bear, seem to be taking advantage of it. Bear, of course, takes offense to this, insists upon going to the party anyway. Ian agrees, but says, please don't bring Nikki. And in exchange, I'll tell Sarah not to show up either. Bear ultimately agrees. He goes back home to confront Nikki about the cat and to also, say, hey, I'm going to this boys' night with Ian. So he gets home. Nikki admits that she's absolutely disgusting because she literally stood there the entire time waiting for Bear to get home. So she is covered in sweat and excrement. It's gross. While she's in the shower, that's when Bear decides to say, like, through the door, hey, Did you cook my cat? Can you not do that? It really upset me. And she continues showering, like, oh, my bad. I didn't mean to do that. But then he says, Ian invited me to a boys' night and I'm going to go. She shuts off the water and starts freaking out. Like, you don't have to lie to me. Sarah invited me to that party too. Bear, of course, is totally thrown off by this because he was under the impression that, Sarah wasn't going. Bear reluctantly brings Nikki along. Ian, of course, gets mad at Bear for doing so. A very awkward party scene ensues where we see Nikki being fully possessive over Bear to the point that they're playing this like adult Jenga game where there are like different things written on the blocks that you pick out. And I forget what some of the other ones were, but Bear's stood out for me for plot reasons. Bear had to switch seats at some point because of one of the other blocks, and this block said kiss the person to your left, so to his left is Sarah. And Nikki makes this frown face that actually left the entire theater in stitches. And I will admit it was kind of a ridiculous, like, grumpy face. Nikki gets up, goes behind Sarah, pulls her out from the way in the chair and all, and then gets next to Bear to kiss him. And then after that, it was just a very awkward energy in the room. Nikki freaks out for no reason, smashes a bottle, and begins stabbing herself in the head with the bottle. Bear takes her to the hospital. Like, nothing happens at the hospital. There's like a scene where it looks like the nurse is like arguing with Bear about what happened, but we don't really hear the dialogue. We just see it from a distance, and we see Nikki acting nuts. He ends up taking her home. After talking a little bit, they end up going to bed. And at like 2:45 in the morning, he gets a text from Sarah saying, hey, I've really got to talk to you. Please meet me at this park so we can talk. If you're not going to come to the park, I'm going to come to you. So Bear obviously decides to sneak out of bed and get out so he can talk to Sarah. They have a conversation in the car, which ultimately leads to Sarah admitting that Ian and Nikki had an on and off affair over the past couple of years where they were hooking up behind everybody's back. And she believes that a big reason why Nikki is suddenly interested in Bear is because she wants to get back at Ian for having no romantic feelings for Nikki. The conversation starts steering towards an implication that perhaps Bear would feel better off dating Sarah. And it seems like there might actually be something going on, like, okay, a little bit of resolution here. And then suddenly, out of nowhere, in dives Nikki in the driver's side window, grabs Sarah by her head, grabs a brick, and starts smashing Sarah's face into this brick. And it is such a graphic, bloody, brutal death scene. I was actually reading up on the movie before I did this video, and apparently that scene was so graphic, it almost got an NC-17. They had to cut like 6 or 7 of the smashes. I found that very interesting. That, of course, leads to Nikki suddenly being like, well, I love you, but we got to get rid of this body now, and you got to help me. And, of course, Bear is like, you're fucking nuts. And so he ends up eventually going along with it, but we can tell he is out to lunch at this point. He's totally numb. He like doesn't know what to do anymore. He, the next day, goes back to the shop where he was shopping for that crystal necklace and found the One Wish Willows, and is looking for more of them because he has the idea of maybe like making another wish to take that wish back. But he ended up like calling the number on the carton for the One Wish Willow, and the person on the other line basically told him like, you can't cancel your wish, you can't revise your wish, you already made your wish, so you basically have to live with it. And the conversation basically implies that the only way that Bear can really undo the wish is by dying. He would pretty much have to kill himself in order to, cancel out the wish. The other alternative is get somebody to counteract that wish with a wish of their own. So he comes up with the idea to bring a One Wish Willow over to Ian to have him basically say like, I wish that Bear's wish didn't happen, or something like that. Of course, Ian is like, oh yeah, that's bullshit. He grabs the One Wish Willow and goes, I wish for $1 billion, snaps it in half, and of course, $1 billion cash starts raining down. I kind of want a One Wish Willow now. Bear is feeling defeated at this point, goes back home, is looking around for Nikki, where she's like going on this tangent about how like they need to love each other and that he needs to love her forever because she loves him forever, all this stuff. Ian ends up coming by, like barging into the home, And Nikki, who somehow got a gun. How did she get that gun? Anyway, she took the gun and actually like shot Ian dead. Ian is desperate. He has no idea what else to do. So he decides to go to the bathroom to do the only thing he feels like he can do at this point, and that is end his life. He ultimately opens up the medicine cabinet and finds the exact medicine that his cat had gotten into, which happened to be OxyContin. And he takes the entire bottle before suddenly like having a chicken out moment of his own, and he tries like puking the pills back up. Has a change of heart. He leaves the bathroom and he's suddenly like, Nikki, I love you, and holds her close and starts kissing her. But then he falls to his knees and he succumbs to the medication and dies. Nikki is devastated, heartbroken, and grabs the gun and is ready to end her own life. But then suddenly she has a moment where she's like, where am I? She doesn't say where am I, but it's in her eyes. You can suddenly tell like the effects of the wish just totally disappeared. And Nikki's just sat there like horrified. Bear is dead. Ian's dead. Sarah's dead. It's just her. And the movie ends with the sound of her sobbing. And it was a very unsettling and disturbing ending to an unsettling and disturbing horror movie all around. So yeah, if you wanted the spoiler-free version, welcome back. So basically, Obsession is a batshit crazy movie that I loved. I thought the pacing was great. It didn't feel like it overstayed its welcome at all. There weren't too many pacing issues. It was rightfully disturbing. It tells the perfect like morality tale of being careful what you wish for. And it does so in such an effective way. And I do truly feel like it's one of the best horror movies I've watched in the last decade or so. And I would have to recommend it to anybody who's even remotely curious to see it. I thought it was a great movie, though. Well written, well directed. The actors did an amazing job. Again, the actress who played Nikki, Indy Neveretti, she deserves awards for her portrayal in the film. For her work portraying Nikki, I thought she deserved so many awards. Like, she did such a good job. She really did. Michael Johnston, he did a really good job playing Bear, and the whole film is just chef's kiss. I give it a 9 out of 10. I really enjoyed it, and I'm looking forward to seeing more movies. So again, let me know in the comments movies that you would like to see me review, and I will get around to it as soon as I possibly can. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you in the streams. Until next time, peace out.